Hey y'all. They let me back up here. Dad asked me to do the offer tour yesterday, and I told him, yeah, I could put something together for it. And then he said, okay, just don't do what you did last time. And I looked at him and said, it was fine. Mom said you did a good job. Just don't do it good last time. Don't do what you did last time, and don't repeat yourself. And I was like, okay. What did I say last time? Besides knowing it probably was about offerings. So I was like, well, I can probably just find it. I'll just look it up on YouTube. We happen to have an archive of stuff we said last time on YouTube now. So I looked on YouTube. I just typed in Church of God, Seventh Day, Crossroads Church of God, Seventh Day, Kyle, and found not it. I didn't find it. But I did see all the other titles for all the other oddball things y'all let me talk about up here. Titles like What I Learned from Mark Wizenbeek, or Pokemon Fellowship, or Tim Schafer and Potato Salad. And just the stuff that I get up there. And it just got me thinking about the crazy stuff y'all have let me say, but also the crazy stuff that you could just find on YouTube, period. And unfortunately, that is where I'm starting today, so bear with me for a little bit again, y'all. Because this is kind of about how YouTube almost took down cable TV as we know it, or at least hasn't yet. Mostly big movie channels and pro sports is what keeps cable TV in that rigid format that it's in alive right now, and not just everything going to streaming services. Like I say as we know it. I mean, not as my kids know it. My kids are used to this YouTube streaming age. When my daughter says, "Can I watch a movie over again?" Like, she just kind of grabs the slider on Netflix and goes to her favorite parts and is done with the movie in half an hour because that's all the parts I wanted. And she walks away. Like, no, we just put the VHS. When we were kids, we put the VHS in. We watched the whole thing. We're in. We're committed. Like I said, they're used to this TV age. I remember when one of the first times Jeremiah had a chance to meet David Freeman in person. He had only been watching him on YouTube, but it's me and him were watching other YouTube shows. To him, this was about as much as meeting a celebrity as he could have been back when he was 7 and 8. And I remember David a little confused when Jeremiah was like, "Hey, I love watching your show." And David not thinking about it as a show, but as far as Jeremiah was concerned, David is no different from any other YouTuber he was watching. So you can put that on your resume now, sir. But what do I mean by the fact that it almost took it down? Cable TV programming gets set. What comes on at a specified time is determined by a schedule determined by a bunch of guys in a conference room over in somewhere else. They determine what shows are going to be on, what will be allowed in those shows, what time they come on, and you don't really get a say in that. You watch what they give you, or you change the channel. If you don't like what's on those, you go through the rest of the channels and or turn it off as your tolerance allows. But with YouTube, or any streaming service, you go on, you watch what you want when you want to watch it. It's there at your convenience. There's even a button to skip the ads most of the time. And if there's not, this the companies that have realized no one's going to want to watch our ad anyway, so they make it a 5-second ad. We'll get out of your way. We know you want to watch this guy play a video game. But like I said, when you're watching TV, if you don't like what's on, you got to switch the channel, you got to keep going, or you turn it off. With YouTube, though, there's always something else out there. There's plenty of content these days, let alone back when it first started, or even when Jeremiah met a celebrity. But you can always find something else to watch. There's always something else out there. And then suddenly you might be watching stuff that you find a bit more fulfilling or entertaining because you found what you particularly needed, you found what suited you. What happened was people started flocking to this and demanding more. The model works, why it almost took out TV, because you were able to find what you wanted. You were able to find more niche things that appealed to you. Effectively, the idea behind it all was if you have a large enough market and you can only reach 10%, 5-10% of that market, if that market's big enough, you're still going to make money off it. You're still going to have some kind of success. And that's what happened. People went out there. They started demanding more. They went to YouTube and these streaming services more often than they were for TV. Where am I at? And then there was this kind of thing where it's like, okay, we're trying to make this stuff for people, but a lot of this is out of their pocket. They've still got day jobs and such like that. Until one guy from a band that I happened to listen to, I didn't know that at the time, but I found out later, a band called Pomplamoose. One of the guys created a company called Patreon. And what that started was a model where they're like, hey, look, we're doing a thing. If you want to support us, we do, 3 music videos a month? You go in here, you pledge $1 a video, that's it, and then you're helping support us. And that doesn't sound like a lot, certainly. But if enough people are contributing $1 a video, Pomplamoose went from, paying out of pocket to do these music videos every month to suddenly having a budget and being able to give back to the people that were doing it to create more content. Artists like Nate Wants to Battle started his own production company eventually, where he's able to lift up struggling artists too and give them more of a spotlight. These people, these independent creators, had found an audience and were able to give back in a direct relationship between the viewer and the creator. They didn't have to let that corporation into the midst of it. Kyle, what's your point? Raise your hand if you see where I'm going yet.
Patreon.
Okay.
Every little bit
We've
counts.
been there, yeah. So it's easy to look at the state of the church lately, spread out. It's easy to, if you're looking at it maybe in a negative light, spread out thin the way it is. These little groups all over the place, especially after having a period of time where there was just one very large organization that we were all connected through. And these tiny, but now we're in these smaller groups where like we may have a dozen people, and there are some groups who are like, wow, a dozen would be nice one day. And, not all of us can always afford a whole ton to put into the coffers when it's time to put into the coffers. And so what could be achieved by our meager pittance in these little churches across the world? But it's a whole lot if you really want to know, because there are people out there who are tired of changing channels and not finding what they want, what they need. They aren't getting the bread that nourishes their soul. And each of these little churches is going to be putting out what they need, maybe with slightly different flavors, but that's okay because everyone has their own tastes and each fellowship has their own tenor that you may or may not jive with, but you're going to find someone out there if there are enough of us out there, enough of these little groups, these little families out there. And when we support that fellowship, that tenor, that frequency gets stronger, and it's easier to call out to those channel surfers and let them know that there is a program that will bring them fulfillment. The church tried a big organization, but it got to the point that, like those big TV corporations, they got to the point where they're telling people what they're doing, when they're doing it, and who they're doing it with, or not who they're doing it with. And if you don't like it, they took your TV, and maybe I'm taking the analogy too far. And I know they reached a lot of people. A lot of people talk about how many people they reached, but when that experiment failed and when that corporation collapsed, there was only static on the TV, and just as many people potentially walked away, assuming the message was dead. But there was also a lot of people who in that collapse got together and started supporting these small splinter cells that sprang up everywhere, these little independent groups. Some became bigger, some just stayed small, strong groups. The creators, these people who created something out of that debris. And that's what they invested in because they believed in the broadcast, not in the TV studio. And that analogy carries even in the Bible. God's people had a high priest. They had one spot they could go to for their spiritual fulfillment. They could go to that temple. They could go to that high priest. And he would communicate to God for them. But just like one lighthouse in Jerusalem is not going to help the ships out in Cape Hope, you need a lot of lighthouses along the coast to keep it safe. When God was changing the world, when he started the second covenant, he knew one guy over in Jerusalem wouldn't help the world. He knew he needed all these little bodies because now we all have access to the high priest, a direct relationship between us and the Creator. But I don't think we like to look at this situation in a negative light either. I don't think any of us have an issue to give up our offerings and our tithes to our churches, because they've been feeding us and they continue to feed us, and we join into that tenor and that resonance in the room and make it stronger. We aren't all that worried about where that money's going. The tithing and offering is not a tax, and it's not a bill come due. It is an act of faith. We believe and have faith that those funds are going into keeping the lights on, the oil burning, to maintaining the broadcast. And the first time I heard someone, because a lot of the times when tithing came up, it was like in a specific sermon, and the minister always kind of apologized, I got to bring it up. But the first time that I heard someone describe an offering or a tithe as an act of faith and belief, and not just a command they're reluctant to talk about, was from a YouTube video with our own resident YouTuber. So we may not reach the whole world with our streaming, with our content, but we will reach some, and it will matter to them. We have a world population, a potential audience out there of 7.8 billion people in the world. Even reaching 1%, let alone 5 or 10% of that audience, is a task in itself, being almost 8 million if you want to do the math on that real quick. I did it for you. But those offerings are worth every cent if we can reach not even 1%, but just one more soul who's tired of what he is told to watch and wants a real message meant precisely for them.